Hello, my name is Dan Quintana and I'm a senior researcher in biological psychiatry from the University of Oslo, and over the next few moments I'm going to be talking to you about ways that we can improve the credibility of meta-analysis with transparent research practices. Now, there are thousands, if not millions, of ways that we can analyse a typical data set. There are a lot of decisions that you can make, and this has often been referred to as the garden of forking paths. You can think about, are you going to be doing a frequentist or a Bayesian analysis, ways to deal with outliers, the actual analysis itself. There are so many decisions to potentially make. But when it comes to the ways that we actually see science reported in papers, quite often all that we see are the analyses that worked. And this is what's gotten us into the mess that we see ourselves in that a lot of findings in the literature have been difficult or impossible to reproduce. And this is because the original findings were very selective with the way they did their analysis. Now, of course, this is a big problem in primary research, but this is also a problem in meta-analysis. And I think this is under-discussed. And this is a problem because meta-analysis is often seen as the gold standard of evidence synthesis, yet people aren't really carefully considering ways that analytical decisions can actually affect the results that we get for meta-analysis. So with meta-analysis pre-registration, essentially you pre-specify the analysis that you're going to do before you collect data, and this also includes the inclusion and exclusion criteria for your studies and your search terms. Now, if you actually look at your data and realize that there's just one study which is messing up your results, if you're flexible with your inclusion and exclusion criteria, all of a sudden you can get a significant result. And it's reasons like that it's really important to pre-specify the sort of analysis that you're doing to reduce confirmation bias. An alternative to pre-registration, a very close alternative, is the registered reports format, in which you submit your paper with the rationale and with your methods before you collect the data, and the reviewers actually assess the strength of your analysis. And if they believe you have a strong rationale and a strong methodology, then they will provide, or the journal will provide, in principle acceptance of your paper regardless of your results. And this is a fantastic way to ward off publication bias, because it means the results are going to get published regardless of what you find. Now, one thing which is often said is that pre-registration provides a plan, not necessarily, but it's not a prison. You're allowed to deviate from what you originally proposed, but the most important thing is that you're explicit that you're doing an exploratory analysis versus a pre-specified analysis. So it's okay if your plans change. So ultimately, by doing a pre-registered or a registered report meta-analysis, you're improving the credibility, or you're increasing the credibility of the results that you get with meta-analysis. Now, like I mentioned before, there are thousands of ways or millions of ways to analyze a potential data set, but an alternative to doing a pre-registered meta-analysis, or perhaps you've already collected your data and you think, oh, it's too late. It's not too late, because one thing you can do is what's called a multiverse meta-analysis, in which you perform a universe of potential analyses or potential models for your meta-analysis and look at the results. So here we can see that there's a number of different potential meta-analyses looking at different moderators and different ways of actually doing the analysis itself. And out of all these potential ways to do this analysis, very few were actually significant. So if the result that was reported was saying that, yes, there's actually an effect for this meta-analysis, but by doing the multiverse meta-analysis, only a few percent of these potential analyses were significant, then this would demonstrate that the actual analytical approach was very selective. But by presenting a multiverse meta-analysis, you can actually demonstrate that no matter what sort of approach that is taken, you're still getting a similar result. So I would check out the reference if you were interested in doing this multiverse meta-analysis. Now, there's a lot of debate in the primary research literature about sharing data. Within human research, quite often we're thinking about privacy, and with other types of research, we're concerned about scooping. But when it comes to meta-analysis, because the data that you're extracting from papers are already public, there is no excuse not to release meta-analysis data. You can release your meta-analysis data, and it makes it easy for other people to verify your results, but other people to also build on your results for future meta-analysis. So there's no excuse not to be sharing your data with your papers. And on top of that, by publishing your analysis scripts, you also make it easy for others to verify your work. So if you're doing your meta-analysis in R, you can share your R script. A lot of people aren't as confident with using scripting like R for their analysis, but the good thing is there are alternatives. There's a great alternative, a great open source alternative, which is called Jamovi. And within Jamovi, there's a fantastic module called Major, where you can do a point and click meta-analysis. You can put your data in, you can do your meta-analysis, you can make nice plots, and you can actually report this and share the data file. And because the software is free, anyone can open it up and reproduce your meta-analysis, which means that you can actually have a reproducible meta-analysis without necessarily having scripting experience. So if you are interested in meta-analysis and reproducibility and want to hear more, check out my Twitter page at dsquintana, as well as my blog, dsquintana.blog. Thanks for your attention. Looking forward to some interesting Q&A.